I'm Steve Kassay. I'm the director of custom applications and integrations at GSI. I've been at GSI for 10 years. I've been working in consulting for longer than I can remember, probably 30 years. So what we're going to go over today is security issues around applications that you bring into your data center and any applications you work on internally. A lot of companies have small applications, and some of them are rather large that they built over the years or that they keep on maintaining that do functions that are very unique to the business, and those often get ignored for security reasons. I mean, ignored for security audits and so forth. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. The issue is that you bring in software or you build some software and it gets compromised. I just put in a few of some of the more noticeable problems that people have had, attacks. We had the SolarWind, which is the most ironic attack, because SolarWind is supposed to protect you from software attacks. But what they ended up doing is they got into the one of the vendors' code repository, put some code in there, it got deployed, and it caused a pretty nasty breach because they didn't have very secure software lifecycle, SDLC. There was the Twitter breach, which was more due to social engineering, but obviously a software company should be a little bit more acute to those sorts of attacks, and we can talk a little bit about how you can mitigate some of that. And then what we mentioned in the head of our talk, the Log4J vulnerability attack. How can you identify those things? How can you fix them in your code? And what can you do to make sure that your vendor's code that you have in your data center is also secure? All right, so obviously security needs to be part of any sort of software development. It can't be just pushed off to the side and just hoping that whatever your network security is going to be able to handle all your security issues. Taking a security first approach is used to be preferred, but it is now necessary. People are getting hacked all the time, and when it happens, it's ugly, painful, and embarrassing. So keeping your eye on security is got to be one of the most important things that you're doing. I'm going to go through 10 ways to kind of keep your eye on the ball when it comes to security. First of all, making sure that whatever code that you're writing internally is following the best security practices. You want to make sure that it is, it's been minimally open for vulnerabilities and exploits. that you won't get attacked easily. You also have to pay attention to your authentication and authorization. They are two different things. One is who can get into your system, and the other authorization is what can they do when they get in there. So, if you're developing software and there is some sort of front end security, make sure that you've gotten that tightened down and periodically review it. In the back end, you want to have your data encrypted. So if somebody takes something, they can't really do much with it if you're using a strong encryption methodology. And regularly look at the vulnerability management. Regularly assess your vulnerability through scanning software. And again, all of these things that we're talking about can show how Veracode can help a lot of stuff. There's also penetration testing. You can either pen testing or other forms of intrusion testing to make sure that whatever umbrella of security you put into your system is actually working. Just because you put it in doesn't necessarily mean that it's working, and what you put in last year doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go and work this year. So always keep an eye on your applications. If you put out APIs, that we are in a connected world. Every software has APIs that you can connect to, and a lot of companies build their own APIs, build their own web services. And you want to make sure that those APIs, those endpoints, are secured as well. You want to know who's using them, how they're using them, and make sure that they don't get abused. There's tons of software out there that you can put as a gateway in front of the APIs, and there's lots of libraries that you can bring in to make sure that they stay secure. You should have make sure that your servers are all patched, and that you can have patch management software. That's something we can also help you with. But you got to make sure that whatever vulnerabilities have been identified are patched at a timely fashion inside your network. You want to make sure that your security configuration is properly configured, whether with the servers and databases and other components, so they can reduce the possibility of attack. You should have a securely SDLC, a secure development lifecycle, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But that means that not only do you write the code, but at the same time you got to make sure that it's secure, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. User education, that's something that we do here at GSI. We're enrolled in monthly classes. They're usually just videos that last 10 minutes, but they kind of go over how you as a user need to pay attention to security. And we also have phishing emails sent to us through our educational system to kind of trick us to do things that they want us to do, social engineering attacks. And if you fall for those more than a few times, you have to go back and get re-educated, so it keeps a score on how likely you are to fall those things. So that's another really helpful way. of keeping your whole infrastructure secure. And depending upon what industry you're in, you gotta make sure that you have that you're following compliance and regulations. And that also ties into the last one, which is the incident reporting plan. Because if you are in certain industries or you're doing business in Europe, you have to report security breaches, and you have to have a plan to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be a mess when if the hack happens and you don't have that all set up. And when we talk about internally, anybody that's developing their own software, bringing in a software development life cycle and having this actually written down so everybody follows makes writing the code a lot easier, and everybody knows what their responsibilities are. But in this diagram, the top portion is usually what most companies do. You design the software, you send it back to the users, you review it, then you put it together, and you implement it, whether it's agile or a waterfall process, doesn't matter, and then you deploy it. But these days you have to also take security in hand. That not only should you talk about the architecture, but let's talk about the security requirements that are around the architecture. And then a lot of times we put together use cases. How are the users going to use it? Well, maybe we should do threat modeling. How could people come and attack it, and what can they do once they get access to it? When you're implementing the code and pushing it out, do security and penetration testing as you're pushing the right before you push the code out, so you can make sure that you've gotten those security holes tightened up. And when it goes back to stage 7, that's maintenance. That makes sure that you're going to be doing those things: threat modeling, security penetration testing through the life cycle, the life of the whole application, as long as you have it deployed. So we brought our friends in from Veracode, and most of the things that I've discussed, they can help us with. They're gonna give us an overview, and then they're gonna show us how the software actually works. It can do security testing, dynamic application security testing. It can do software composition analysis. So if it has libraries that are brought into your software that have been compromised, it will call them out and it will say, look, this library that you're using is a high level security risk, and this is the version you should go to. We use Veracode internally for our products that we have developed, and it's been super helpful in keeping all these things lined up. It is hard when there's some sort of compromised library that you may not even know that you're using in your system that gets compromised. A lot of vendors now give you a software building and materials, an SBOM. When you get the software, that just says, okay, here is the software and here are all the libraries that we're using. So if there is a compromise in one of those libraries, at least you'll know that that library is existing in your ecosystem. It will also, they do security training and awareness. Remediation guidance is huge. They have an AI generated tool that will help not only identify places in the code that are insecure, but it'll make recommendations on how you may to make it more secure. And you got comprehensive reporting, so you can use that if you get a SOX 2 compliance audit or whatever software audit you need to do within your enterprise. So that's my portion of this discussion. I will hand this off to both Sean and Luke. Let me stop sharing. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it, the introduction here. So, folks, very nice to meet everyone here today. Let me just pop over to my screen share here so we can get everyone going. Hoping everyone can see my screen. Assuming so. Awesome. Yeah, so like I said, thanks for the introduction, Steve, and to the extended GSI team for having us on here today. My name is Sean Gard. As you can see, alongside myself is my colleague, Luke. And we're going to talk a bit further about how to manage 0 days with Veracode, specifically what actions you can take with the Veracode platform and some of our services to avoid becoming the next Log4J catastrophe. So to kick things off, we'll do a little bit of introduction on Veracode. Steve obviously gave us a fairly comprehensive 35,000-foot view of Veracode's products and services. And we'll also go into a little bit further detail about the timeline of events that occurred specifically during the Log4J incident, discuss how we responded, and then show how we can protect the software supply chain in the demo that Luke will be presenting. So before we dig into details, not knowing everyone's knowledge of Veracode beyond what we've been talking about so far, want to give you a little high-level understanding of where we sit currently today in the software security market. So as a company, we've been around for almost 2 decades and have scanned the most lines of code of anyone in the market as of today. And we believe that in order to have an excellent application security product, language coverage is a minimum requirement. That's why we're providing, and supporting more than 27 different programming languages across web, desktop, mobile, with 100+ industry frameworks as well. And then lastly, and I think the most important point, is that finding flaws is a very interesting business to be in, but fixing flaws is what a lot of CISOs, risk officers, and even board members care about most. And this is how we bring value to a lot of our customers' programs. So as you can see, and what Steve had kind of mentioned too, we can solve many problems here at Veracode with our complete portfolio of solution capabilities that yield various benefits to our customers. For purposes of today's discussion, we're going to be focusing on the highlighted items, which show specifically how Veracode can protect your software supply chain by identifying risk in your third-party libraries with our software composition analysis offering. Now, before we get into specifically how we do it and show you that in a live action demo, I'm going to have Luke dive into what happened during the Log4j incident and how we as a company responded.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. And pretty much as we all know, the Log4j vulnerability was a true 0 day, so there's no real complete way to prevent them. But to give you a little bit of insight on how Veracode handled the Log4j incident, and the biggest takeaways was that, a day after the vulnerability was publicized, we had multiple different sessions with our customers throughout the day, and our founder and some other research individuals had live streams to go ahead and share with those customers. But probably the biggest takeaway was that a couple days after the vulnerability was publicized, we gave 10-day courtesy license to all of our customers, allowing everyone to gain insight into where exactly in my applications is there a possibility of this Log4j vulnerability living. And with Veracode, we're able to go ahead and combat these 0 days when they occur, and I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of ways that we're able to do that. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Sean, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
I can now.
All right, sweet. So, there's a couple ways that we're able to go ahead and help, combat these 0 days. And the biggest one is, integration within the software developmental lifecycle through automation allows us to continuously keep track of the inventory of vulnerabilities and flaws and makes us aware of the most up-to-date information about our applications, which we're able to gain insight with reporting and analytics. Now I'm going to come over here and take a look at a custom dashboard that I was able to generate with my data in my applications, showing me insight into all of those applications that have the Log4j vulnerability. Now, as we see here, this gives me that holistic approach, showing me each application and where the Log4j vulnerabilities that I know exist without having to go ahead and rescan any of my applications. So now that I understand the scope of how my applications are affected by this Log4j vulnerability, I can start understanding in more detail how it affected the application and then go ahead and start remediating those third-party components utilizing our software composition analysis. Where with software composition analysis, we have two different methods, an upload and scan, which I'll touch on a little bit later, but then our agent-based scan. So coming into, one of my applications that I've gone ahead and scanned, this gives us clarification to, what are those vulnerabilities that are currently tied to the version that we have in hand. And when I go ahead and jump into a project, right away, I'm going to be able to see, all of those issues within my application. But then a little bit of understanding is, if I want to get, a project inventory, get an understanding of, all right, what are my vulnerabilities, which libraries are affected and how many vulnerabilities they have, or even the license risk that's associated with it, I can jump into each of these different tabs. But if we go ahead and take a look at these issues, and we come down to one of these Apache Log4j ones, and let's take a look at this SQL injection one, where I can click on this issue ID, and we're going to be able to see the vulnerability and CVE associated with it and understand how to go ahead and fix it. Now, one great thing about as we go ahead and click into this is that not only are we going to see how we're able to go ahead and fix the third-party component, we're going to be able to go ahead and see a dependency graph where as we're able to go ahead and let me go ahead and come back actually. We're going to be able to see, the fix and a dependency graph showing us what exactly is going on with our third-party components, showing how our direct dependencies are calling upon other transitive dependencies, where ultimately that vulnerability can go ahead and be living. So right off the bat, we can see this fix section where we're going to go ahead and tell the users that, this version that we are currently using has no fix to it. So users should upgrade to the new Log4j2 or remove the usage of that appender from their configurations. Where the dependency graph gives us that insight into, our direct dependency is calling upon that Log4j vulnerability. Now, the other way that we are able to do software composition analysis is with the upload and scan, where this runs simultaneously with the static analysis scan. So right away, when we go ahead and take a look at one of our applications, we're going to be able to see the component and the version we're using, also the license risk that's associated with the number of known vulnerabilities that are in that version. So if we go ahead and click on this Log4J, we're going to be able to see other versions that we could possibly go ahead and update to, showing us which ones have been patched for those vulnerabilities. So that way, instead of updating to maybe the newest and best, we can find a version that's a little bit closer to the one that we currently have in hand, instead of possibly going ahead and breaking the build by updating to the newest and best. Now, Veracode is able to go ahead and help you gain insight into fixing these vulnerabilities, but I want to show you all how these libraries are exploited by an attacker, and Veracode can help secure and identify those ways. So if we come over to this vulnerabilities, we're going to be able to see all of those vulnerabilities associated with this library. And if we took a look at this specific SQL injection, which is a very high severity, here's how an attacker is able to execute it using SQL commands, and showing us that not only is a CVE associated, but a CWE. So moving away from, software composition analysis, we're going to be able to go ahead and start to understand how maybe our static and our first party code can go ahead and ultimately allow an attacker to execute and attack our third party components, where as we are in this application, we can come over to triage flaws, get an insight into all of our flaws that we have in relations with static analysis. But then let's go ahead and filter them for, that CWE 89, that SQL injection that we saw. And we see that there's a handful of these flaws in relations to SQL injection, but how do we go ahead and remediate them? If we go ahead and click on, a specific flaw to see those flaw details, we're able to see exactly where in our application this is occurring, all the way down to the line number, but then also get an understanding of a description of why that is a flaw, and then how to go ahead and remediate it. But then also some additional remediation guidance, where if we go ahead and click on it, it's going to show us an example of that CWE written in the same language the developers are writing their application in, on how this flaw is exploited and then how it's remediated. Now, fixing flaws is something that we take very seriously here at Veracode, and we strive to help those developers in a couple of different ways. One way is by going ahead and showing them these remediation guidance, but another way is to go ahead and use the schedule a consultation with our application security consultants, who are able to get on calls right away and help the developers remediate and give guidance right away. Now, another way that we're pretty proud about is that we just released a new tool of ours called Veracode Fix, which is an intelligent remediation tool that generates secure code patches that developers are able to review and implement to remediate those security flaws without having to manually code a fix and go through that process. And by a result of this, your developers are able to deliver more secure software faster at a lower cost with a higher confidence. That basically sums up our demo today, and I just want to thank you all for your time. And if there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I'll answer them.
I do have a couple questions here, guys. Unless you want to keep rolling. I didn't know, Sean, if you wanted to go back or cover anything Luke didn't.
No, I think it was fairly comprehensive. So yeah, we're happy to answer some
Okay.
questions.
First question I have is for, I'll just make up names, like I'll make up my aunt's name, or no, I'm kidding. We'll keep it, I won't mention who it is, but yeah, I mean, the first question is just a basic one. Um, and it could be from any sort, just answer for any large or small company. How will my developers utilize
Hey,
this
Mike,
tool?
I think you're
Oh,
breaking up.
breaking up again. How will my developers be able to utilize this tool in different ways? Um,
Yeah. So the question, I just want to make sure I heard it, is how developers are able to utilize this tool. Is that
yeah,
what you said,
yeah,
Mike?
they just said my developers, but yeah, you could say it's from a small or large company, I guess. However you want to answer that.
In a couple different ways, whether that's with the CI/CD system, utilizing YAML and different PowerShell or command line and scripts, they're able to go ahead and plug our tool into there. And then there's another way that, as we shift left, they're able to go ahead and utilize our IDE integrations. So there's a lot of different ways developers are able to go ahead and kind of stay where they like to work and be able to integrate using Veracode.
Okay, I just got bumped off, but they brought me right back in, so hopefully you didn't notice that. But uh, is there where and this is a question I had too, is how is Veracode pulling, like, where are you pulling your vulnerability data from? You may have described it, but I maybe kind of reiterate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we talked about that a little bit during the demonstration, but in addition to the National Vulnerability Database, Veracode has actually built a proprietary database that's 1.5 times the size of the NVD, or National Vulnerability Database for short. And it's consistently being updated by our security research team. So the security research team is kind of using a combination of data mining and machine learning. That's looking at like a lot of different resources. So commits, issues, change logs, pull requests, bug reports, and then they're verified back by our research team for publication in our database. The reason why we have this and the reason why it's important, we've actually published recently our annual State of Software Security report. It's a report that we publish on a yearly basis, talking a little bit more about the findings of our customer programs that recommend that if you're looking for an SCA solution, you're in the market, especially the folks on the phone, it should leverage multiple sources for flaws beyond the NVD to give advanced warning to teams, as it can take months for a vulnerability to appear in the NVD. And now this calls right directly back to what we saw with Log4J. People were kind of caught a little flat-footed, didn't have the ability to respond quick enough because they didn't have data to them. The proprietary database that Veracode has within our platform helps manage that situation a little bit better.
We did have two questions from Alan, who is on the webcast today. Which IDE works with Veracode, and which programming language does Veracode support?
Yeah, great question, Alan. So for the IDEs, we have IntelliJ, PyCharm, and VS Code for the SCA plugin. And for static analysis, that's Eclipse, IntelliJ and Android Studio, Visual Studio, and the new and Legacy. And one great thing about that is, we do have a lot of different ways that we are working on integrating into a lot of other IDEs. We have on our roadmap a full JetBrains suite for integrations coming out. But it is something that we are continuously improving on our footprint. And then for the programming languages that Veracode goes ahead and supports, at a high level, we have probably the widest array of supported languages. We have all the way from Java, C++, C#, Kotlin, Android, COBOL, iOS, the list goes on. But we are going to go ahead and drop in the chat exactly what that is. And yes, we for PL and SQL, we do have support for that, with the supported versions being Oracle 18, 19, 21 and earlier.
Yeah.
I did want to get, I kind of got ahead of myself here when I was having trouble coming back in. I just wanted, we're going to continue with the Q&A, but I did want to make sure that an important thing we're offering with the webcast today is schedule a deep dive demo of the Veracode platform. Obviously, one that goes a little bit more in depth than the few minutes you guys had today. And so, up on this slide here, I will share this in the chat as well, the contact information. But you can contact Steve here to contact us for a consultation. We also have educational resources on our website. We've covered a lot of other application modernization, custom development, also obviously cybersecurity on our website. You could go there. It's just getgsi.com/webcasts. And obviously we have social media. And lastly, I will say too, we'd like to hear how we did on the call with this. Was this webcast worth your time? Anything you think we should add or change? Everyone who submits a feedback is entered to win. We give away one Amazon gift card. So of the 20 of you that could possibly go and fill that out, one of you will guarantee to win a $25 Amazon gift card. So okay, back to the Q&A. Sorry to throw that off, but I will get in big trouble if I don't mention that. So it looks like, Lewis came in with a question about email notification for new vulnerabilities. And it looks like Luke is typing an answer. Is that one better maybe for the typing of the answer, or anything in general you guys would respond to that?
I can go ahead and to answer that. And for, we do have email notifications, and I was going to go ahead and put the link into, our third-party application security testing emails.
Okay.
But at a high level, if we can do, we definitely can integrate with email notifications and even Slack notifications.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd just like to add one thing. I just sent over a link to someone else's answered question. We have an entirely comprehensive, almost like a car owner's manual of Veracode. It's called our Help Center. So that's where you can find a lot of information around our language support, some of our ins and outs of the product, as well as anything regarding IDE integrations that were kind of answered earlier.
Okay. Looks like Frank, who's on the webcast, says, what is Veracode's capacity to handle scan for the number of application, and how do you benchmark the speed?
I'm just trying to reread it again.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry if my audio's breaking up. Let me try that again. What is Veracode?
I got it. Sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah, maybe better just to look at the Q&A at this point. My apologies.
Yeah. So I guess, Veracode's able to handle the capacity of a scan for a number of applications. So the way that we're able to do this is being a SaaS-based company where, as you become a customer, within 15 minutes, you can go ahead and you can start scanning. Whereas, back to that traditional on-prem, you might have to go ahead and scan one app and wait for that to be done. With Veracode, you can go ahead and scan as many apps as you want at once. So there is no limitation on how many apps we can go ahead and be scanned.
And then from a speed standpoint, I guess I'm making sure I kind of follow the question correctly, but typically our benchmarks is based on our median scan times. And Luke, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe for static code analysis, our median scan time on a policy level is about 8 minutes. It might be a little bit less now, but correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, you're completely correct, Sean. And um, it all varies depending on how your application is. Our median time is 8 minutes, and that's from all of our customers, just getting information from them and seeing how long. But ultimately, it takes it's up to you how big what your application is like. So that way we're able to kind of get that holistic approach of seeing exactly how your application interacts. So that way we're able to, show report results back accurately. And then that's another way that we're able to, stand out and have our false positive rate less than 1%, is because we do that deep dive.
Yeah, and Luke brings up a critical point, right? Quality certainly matters in this instance. So, it might be for other providers might have a faster scan median time. However, if you're getting, a large volume of false positives and spending a lot of time doing remediation work, certainly question the benefits of what fast means to your organization.
Okay,
I see
next,
Frank
I
in the
did have um, a question about open source licenses, and can you use Veracode to audit a company's open source licenses?
Yeah, so Veracode software composition analysis, discovers the license data during the scan of those third-party components in your application. And we go ahead and provide that information from the license name and data. So that way you're able to further investigate, the obligations that license entails. And then we go ahead and provide, risk ratings. So that way that you're able to get that whole complete understanding, where you're able to utilize our platform and see that result, and then also go ahead and pull that into a CSV format if you want to go ahead and share that out and report that back to anyone.
Great, we're moving right along here. We've got about 12 minutes left, so we're probably going to end a little early. But I did have one more question in from Frank had a follow-up question. Uh, maybe I missed it. Does that host any client applications or data or metadata where it hosts?
Yeah, so when your application and data gets uploaded to Veracode, we encrypt that through TLS and we store it in our native cloud. From there, we generate 2 unique keys for it, utilizing AWS's key management system. But one great thing is that we aren't taking your source code. We do binary analysis. So you're going to be uploading, your package artifact and being able to kind of tell us, at a policy level, we hold the data for 45 days. So that way, if you guys have any questions and want to see reporting, we're able to generate that. But the reason why we hold it for 45 days ultimately is because of those scheduling and consultation calls where our application security consultants are able to answer any of those questions that you have, but you're able to turn that flag from 45 days to less than 1 day if the retention policy. And then I see.
Yeah, Frank answered another one. Great questions, Frank. Native cloud of GSI or any vendor cloud platform such as AWS, Azure, etc.
Yeah, so we use AWS.
Okay.
And Frank, I would say we also do have a cryptography primer that is publicly available. So if you'd like to kind of review it further, and for folks on the phone, if you'd like to review it further, a little bit more about how Veracode manages customer data, we're happy to send that over as a follow-up.
What about your SCA agent? Does it does it prioritize vulnerability fixes? How would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so with the SCA tool, taking a look at, primarily the agent based, it leverages, control flows to map out the data flows through open source libraries. So that way we're able to see that dependency graph and understanding how other components call upon other components. In doing so, the agent's also able to map out vulnerable methods, which means that you're directly calling a third-party component and directly using the vulnerability that is within there. And then depending on the severity of each vulnerability of vulnerable methods that are in use, we go ahead and assign a risk score for that application.
Great. Well, is there anything else you guys wanted to add in general, or Steve, anything you'd like to say that you heard from the Q&A that you'd like to add from a GSI standpoint?
No, I mean, I think we've covered it all. The Veracode has helped us with our internal software, made it a lot more secure and a lot less vulnerable. And they do a whole suite of services, and they're great partners to bring in, and really paying attention to security is something that is super important. And you bring in someone like Veracode, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than hiring a whole staff of developers that are going to be analyzing the code. They can do it through software and at a fraction of the cost. So it's a great tool to have in your system.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Why are we even doing this today? And because we have a great working relationship with Veracode, and we don't, team up. We're trying to do it a little bit more. We have some cybersecurity webcasts with our partners, but we want to make sure ultimately that prospects that's worth your guys' time here on the call today. So, with that said, I think we'll go ahead and kind of wrap it up. This video, if you or someone would find this useful, you will get a follow-up email with the on-demand or saved version, the videotaped, so to speak, version of this saved up here when we put it on our YouTube website or our YouTube page, and we'll keep plugging away with that. I appreciate too. I've kind of felt like I got my Larry King on today. It's been a long time. It's like Larry and Laredo. Hello, are you there? The technology wasn't too sure about it, but it sounded like everyone got their questions in, and I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule, Veracode, to be here today, and of course everyone listening and joining us. I appreciate it as well, and we'll follow up. You'll see some emails from us with the follow-up to the video, and that's all I have. You guys, any closing thoughts?
Just from the Veracode side, we appreciate the partnership with GSI, and appreciate everyone's time today to give us a little bit of an overview on how we can help.
Outstanding. Well, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your week.